Am I the antagonist for asking my ex to pay their half of household expenses after breakup? I recently decided to end my 6-year relationship with my ex. It was a tough decision since we live together and share pets. To make it work, I had moved 90 miles away from my family and support system, got a new job, made new friends, and joined a new community. However, we are currently still cohabiting until our lease ends or we find new housing. Throughout our relationship, we kept our finances separate. Whenever we made shared purchases, we would Venmo or take turns covering the cost. While it wasn't always exact, we felt it was fair. However, in the past year of living together, we haven't been keeping our finances in balance regularly, despite my wishes. We moved in together in September of 2022 and settled our expenses in mid-January 2023. After that, I let it slide for a while, but by August, I started feeling financial pressure and asked to settle up. I provided a list of my expenses for groceries and dog food, but he didn't provide his. I usually buy the majority of groceries and dog food since he tends to delay shopping until we run out of essentials. This living arrangement makes me uncomfortable, so I took on the responsibility. It's important to note that he consumes most of the food in the house, and my dog eats less than his. A few days after our breakup, I brought up the accounting and asked him to finish it by the end of the week. He didn't like that I mentioned it so soon after the breakup, considering it petty. I went through my statements since January, describing each charge in detail. For some charges, I was unsure if he would agree to share, so I marked them for discussion. I respected that he might need more time to organize his expenses and simply asked him to inform me when he finished. 3 weeks passed and he still hadn't mentioned anything. When I asked him about it, he claimed to have completed it but still found it petty. I didn't ask to see his individual charges because I trusted him to be honest. The difference between our bills amounted to around $1,000. He became increasingly upset and argued that everyone he spoke to agreed that it was petty of me to ask, despite this being our long-standing practice in our relationship. He further mentioned that when we go on trips or visit my family, we usually use his car, even though I always offer mine since it is more fuel efficient. However, he often declines my offer. He has paid $300 of the $500 difference in our household spending, but has been hostile and angry towards me. I value his opinions and perspective, and since our conversation, I have started doubting myself. Am I being petty? Am I the asshole? It is not petty to want to settle the finances and expenses after a breakup. It is a practical and fair thing to do, especially since you have been following this system throughout your relationship. You are entitled to know where you stand financially and ensure that both parties are contributing their fair share. It seems like your ex is trying to deflect blame onto you by calling you petty. This could be a way for him to avoid taking responsibility for his lack of financial contribution. It is not unreasonable for you to ask for this discussion, especially after 3 weeks have passed since you initially brought it up. Additionally, his argument about using his car for trips does not hold much weight since you offered yours, but he declined most of the time. Financial discussions should be based on actual expenses and not hypothetical scenarios. It is important for both of you to have an open and honest conversation about finances and come to a fair resolution. Your ex's anger and hostility towards you are not justified, and it is crucial to address this issue before it further affects your living situation. Am I the antagonist for causing a kid to rebel? I am a 28-year-old male and I have a roommate named Wyatt, also 28 years old. We were roommates in our freshman year of college, and we became close friends and continued living together throughout college. After graduating, we both found jobs in the same area and decided to continue being roommates. Sometimes we have guests over, including our girlfriends. About 2 weeks ago, our friend Josh asked if his younger brothers, Remington, 13 years old, and Beckham, 11 years old, could come over. I was okay with it and agreed to let them visit. Wyatt often speaks with his parents, and he told me that Remington and Beckham had been arguing a lot lately. Their parents wanted to go on vacation since they hadn't had one alone for a while, which I completely understood. I tried to connect with the boys to prevent tensions from escalating. Remington talked to me about baseball and his teammates. He asked me about my job and how I liked living with Wyatt. During the conversation, I mentioned that I had double majored in history and indigenous studies. This prompted Remington to talk about a teammate who is indigenous and ask if I knew about any of his customs. Both Remington and I are white, but he was curious and wanted to understand and respect his friend. He mentioned that the boy sometimes wears native clothing. Remington then shared that Beckham would make derogatory comments about the indigenous boy. Beckham would mock him for not believing in science without actually knowing the boy's beliefs. According to Remington, Beckham believed that being a science enthusiast made him superior to indigenous people. Remington expressed his sadness about this and even asked if men were smarter than women. I questioned his reasoning, and he clarified that it was actually Beckham who believed such things. I ended up learning a lot about Beckham during our conversation, and unfortunately, none of it was positive. I advised Remington to stand up for himself and his friends. He asked if Wyatt would support him, and I assured him that Wyatt would have his back. Last night, Wyatt received a call from his parents, who were shouting at him. They insisted on speaking on speakerphone. Apparently, Remington had become even more argumentative with Beckham recently. Remington and his friends were also talking negatively about Beckham and his friends, suggesting they wouldn't have girlfriends if they continued being sexist nerds. Wyatt's parents then mentioned that they were more lenient with Beckham because he aspired to have a real job as a scientist, unlike Wyatt, who worked at a historical center and supposedly wasn't maximizing his earnings. Later, Remington sent me a direct message on Instagram apologizing to both me and Wyatt, but he made it clear that he would not apologize for his actions. I sought advice from my mom regarding this situation. She believed that I was being rude and causing a rift within the family, potentially transforming Remington into a rebel. She also mentioned that I might have contributed to boosting his ego. So am I the asshole? You initially agreed to have Wyatt's younger brothers over as guests, which was a kind gesture. When Remington started discussing the bigotry and disrespectful behavior of his younger brother Beckham, you listened and attempted to offer advice and support. You encouraged Remington to stand up for himself and his friends, and assured him that Wyatt would have his back. This shows empathy and concern for Remington's well-being. The conflict that arose between the brothers seems to be unrelated to your conversation with Remington. It appears that Wyatt's parents are upset with him for reasons that are unrelated to your actions. Remington's message to you on Instagram, apologizing but refusing to apologize, suggests that he has other issues going on that could be contributing to the tensions within the family. Your mother's advice may not be entirely relevant in this situation, as it seems to misattribute the cause of the conflict to your actions, which does not align with the information presented. However, it could be helpful to communicate with Wyatt and Remington to better understand the underlying issues and work towards a resolution if possible. In conclusion, not the antagonist, not the asshole. Am I the antagonist for telling my classmate that breasts can and are sometimes shaped differently? I, a 19-year-old male, was on lunch the other day when I was just sketching for fun. The angle I was drawing at made the woman who I was drawing have one breast larger than the other. I took a bit of a hiatus from drawing, so my anatomy skills are kind of poor right now. My classmate, Ronaldo, who is 20 years old, was kind of giving me a hard time, which is usual, when he said, "Man can't even draw boobs right. He thinks they're different sizes." I kind of laughed because I thought he was joking, and he said, "What are you laughing at?" I was kind of surprised and said, "You do realize that sometimes women have different sized or shaped boobs, right?" He adamantly said, "No way, a girl can't have two different sized boobs." And the 3 or 4 girls in my class spoke up and said, "Yeah, it's like actually more common than boobs that are exactly the same shape and size on one woman." I'm usually the target of most jokes in the class, so I took the opportunity to really argue with him, especially given the fact that he was deeply in denial, acting like it was unheard of, weird even, for one woman to have boobs that aren't the same size. I said, "Man, and y'all think I'm foolish. This idiot doesn't even know basic female anatomy." He kind of shut up and didn't talk much for the rest of the day. Well, his buddy Ash told me that I was kind of mean for just piling on Ronaldo like I did, and a couple of my other male classmates said I was definitely being rude, but come on. We're in college and Ronnie has dated like 5 ladies since he was in high school and is now engaged. Hell, they never let up on me when I'm the target of a joke, but suddenly I have emotionally wounded this guy? I really don't think I'm wrong, but am I the asshole? Edit a day later. This morning when I came to class, Ronald apologized and said he just felt really stupid for not believing something every woman he's ever been in a relationship with has told him. He said all of his exes have had boobs that are super similar, most of them small enough that he didn't notice a difference, and he thought they were messing with him. The fact that me and all the girls in our class shut him down is an eye-opener as to how thoughtless he can be with his fiancée, and in the future if he has a daughter. From the looks of it, he's going to be learning as much as he can about women's anatomy and health. He does, however, think I was mean about how I carried on, and I pointed out that he and my classmates do it to me, and I take it in stride. Him and I kind of argued, and he said, "Well, we don't mean it," and I said, "Well, you still do it. It's fine, I think it's funny, but if you're going to dish it out, be ready to take it back." He's still upset, but hey, it is what it is. I appreciate all the feedback. You were not wrong for correcting Ronaldo's misconception about female anatomy. He was ignorant about the fact that women can have breasts of different sizes, which many women in your class confirmed. Additionally, it seems like Ronaldo frequently makes jokes at your expense, so it is only fair that you stood up for yourself this time. It's important for people to be educated about basic anatomy, especially when it concerns their partners or potential future children. Ronaldo's subsequent apology and realization of his ignorance show that your argument had a positive impact. Am I the antagonist for telling my sister she makes every interaction about her baby? My sister gave birth to her first child around 2 months ago. The baby is adored by the whole family, including myself. They live 1 hour away, and I have been regularly visiting over the past 2 months to spend quality time with the baby and my sister. We also video call daily to check in on them. This morning, after being on a mini break and offline for the weekend, I video called the family group and was catching up with my mom. Sister joined the call with the baby, and my mom and I made a huge fuss and cooed over the baby. We then continued the conversation, but every so often my sister would start loudly making noises to make the baby smile on camera. Each time we stopped talking and interacted with the baby until my sister came back on screen. On the fifth interruption, I said to my sister that as much as I love seeing the baby join in the call, it's a bit rude to repeatedly interrupt the call, especially since I haven't had a chance to speak to anyone all weekend, and my parents, the baby's grandparents, had already seen the baby that morning. My sister responded by saying that I should want to see the baby since I hadn't all weekend, and she said, "It's really sad that you feel that way towards your niece." "What way?" I asked. "That you don't want to see her." I clarified that my issue was with my sister's lack of self-awareness and constant interruptions, not at all with my niece. She further said that I can't just expect the whole call to be about me, which felt a little hypocritical as the majority of our calls and conversations usually revolve around the baby. Afterward, my sister cried to my parents, and they agreed that although I hadn't explicitly said that I didn't want to see the baby, I won't understand how she felt until I have my own children. However, I don't know if I want kids, so I may never join the club. While I don't claim to understand how all-consuming life and love for a new baby is, I certainly don't think it's realistic to expect everyone else to always match your level of enthusiasm and interest in your baby. I messaged my sister saying that I was sorry I upset her, I love her and the baby, and that I had only wanted to finish my conversation. I appreciate every update and seeing the baby, but there will be times where I want to have a conversation about other things with her or my mom, or something else will take priority for me. However, that doesn't reflect how I feel about either of them. She has ignored the message and as punishment hasn't sent me any pictures of my niece dressed as a pumpkin. I may have to grovel. I think I could have handled things better. But am I the asshole? It seems like you genuinely love and adore your niece, but you were simply expressing your desire to have a conversation with your mom without constant interruptions. It's understandable that your sister may be very excited about her baby, but she should also be considerate of others' needs and conversations. Your sister going to your parents and crying seems like an overreaction, and your parents' response implying that you won't understand until you have your own children is unfair. Everyone has different priorities and interests, and it's unrealistic to expect everyone to always match your level of enthusiasm and interest in your baby. You apologized and expressed your love for your sister and niece, which shows that you didn't mean any harm. It's now up to your sister to accept your apology and move forward from this situation. Am I the antagonist for telling off my GF's friend? A couple of days ago, my 20-year-old male girlfriend went out for drinks with a few of her friends. I'm actually very happy for her because she doesn't have many friends who stick around. However, these two particular girls are often very vocal about their distaste for me and our relationship. Their mindset seems to be, we're single and not tied down. Why should you be? Different guy every night. That's the best way I can explain it. I don't dislike anyone without a reason, and I dislike these girls because they threw a fit when I asked them to stop kissing my girlfriend. It makes me uncomfortable, and my girlfriend admitted she would be too nice to tell them herself. A couple of weeks ago, I found out that one of these girls, let's call her B, keeps pushing my girlfriend to leave me, saying all men are trash, especially your boyfriend and such. I asked my girlfriend about it, and she said it was just jokes. But multiple witnesses have told me otherwise. She promised she would talk to her about it, so I let it go. Fast forward to a few days ago. After the bar with her friends, I drove to meet up with her. Our city is very sketchy, especially at 2 a.m., and I've driven her home many times before because public transportation here is unreliable. At first, she made excuses like B is feeling sick or we called a cab. When I offered to wait with them until the cab arrived, she finally admitted that she just didn't want B interacting with me. I was upset that I couldn't ensure my girlfriend's safety like I usually do because of her friend's behavior. My girlfriend told me to leave, but before I did, I calmly talked to B because I knew my girlfriend hadn't addressed the issue. I asked her why she hated me, and she gave me excuses, blaming it on her views on feminism and just saying she hates everyone. Fed up with her bullshit, I left. The next time I saw my girlfriend, she yelled at me for confronting her friend when she had promised to handle it herself. I pointed out that she hadn't taken care of it for 2 months despite her promises. And it's strange that she tolerates such disrespect towards me without any valid reasons. She's been silent since then, and even though I'm the one who has been hurt from the beginning, I've been the one apologizing. Am I the asshole? You're not the a-hole for confronting your girlfriend's friend about her disrespectful behavior towards you, especially since your girlfriend had been telling you she would handle it, but hadn't taken any action for 2 months. It's understandable that you would want to address the issue directly. It's concerning that your girlfriend's friends are so vocal and negative about your relationship, and it seems like they are actively trying to manipulate your girlfriend into leaving you. Your girlfriend's reaction to your confrontation and her screaming at you seems unfair, as it was her responsibility to address the situation in the first place. Communication and trust are important in a relationship, and it might be worth discussing this situation with your girlfriend once she's willing to have a conversation. It's important for both of you to understand each other's perspectives and ensure that you both feel respected and supported in the relationship. Would I be the antagonist if I refused to pay for my daughter's college for making fun of my stepson's injury and condition? I am a 44-year-old male who is widowed from a previous marriage, and my wife is a 42-year-old female who is also widowed. We both have children from our previous marriages. with her having a 19-year-old son and me having a 17-year-old daughter. We have been married for 3 years now after dating for about 5 years. Our children have known each other since the start, and there haven't been any major conflicts or difficulties apart from the typical adjustments of becoming a new parent or guardian figure. My son used to be an incredibly talented basketball player, and I have extensive knowledge about the sport since I played in college, at a school that is not well known. When he asked me to coach him, I happily agreed. It turns out he is not just good, but Division I level good. My wife works as a controller and I am a pharmacist, so we have a very comfortable income, but we are not wealthy. When my son started receiving scholarship offers for basketball, I realized we could pay for my daughter's college education in full as well, ensuring that neither of them would have any student loan debt upon graduation. I made the mistake of sharing this plan with my daughter. However, our plans changed when my son had a motorcycle accident. He rode someone else's motorcycle without any training, resulting in a serious crash that caused him to lose part of his hand and foot. Although his injuries were not life-threatening, his basketball career came to an end. This happened last year, and my son has been struggling with deep depression ever since. We have been doing everything we can to help him recover, including counseling and medication, but he still feels like his entire identity has been taken away from him. Recently, he confided in me about the unfortunate side effects of his medication, which has drastically affected his libido. He expressed his desire to discontinue this medication, and I advised him to discuss it with his doctor during his next visit. About 2 weeks later, I overheard my daughter speaking to her friends on the phone. They were discussing college, and the conversation shifted to her brother. She expressed her impatience with his constant crying and referred to his injuries as gross. I sensed a significant change in the atmosphere at home ever since my son got injured, but I never realized that my daughter felt this way. I had planned to address this issue with her later, but then I heard her laughingly mention that she had heard about his struggles with erectile dysfunction. This enraged me. I stormed into her room and confiscated her phone, laptop, car keys, and TV. I scolded her, expressing my deep disappointment in how she spoke about her brother and warning her that he might take drastic measures if he were to hear her speaking like that. Later, when my wife returned home, we discussed the situation. While she appreciated the way I defended my son, she believed that denying our daughter financial support for college went too far, considering that we could easily afford it. Would I be in the wrong if I decided not to pay for my daughter's college education? While it is understandable that you were furious and upset about hearing your daughter make hurtful comments about her brother, taking away her college funding is an extreme and disproportionate response. It is important to address and correct her behavior, but punishing her by jeopardizing her future education is not the appropriate solution. Instead, you should have a calm and constructive conversation with your daughter about her comments and explain how hurtful they were. Focus on teaching her empathy and understanding for her brother's situation rather than punishing her financially. It's also worth considering that this is a difficult time for your entire family, and emotions may be running high. It's important to support both your daughter and your son during this challenging period, reinforcing the need for kindness and compassion within the family. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.